this video, I'm going to demonstrate the Tandy PC-4 connected to the Pocket Computer Universal Interface. And this is the prototype for the PCUI, Pocket Computer Universal Interface. And the intent of this device is to connect modern-day printers or vintage printers to vintage pocket computers such as these. This is actually the Tandy PC-4, but it's made by Casio. So this is really a PB-100 from Casio. So these are quite old, and finding the printers for these is sometimes a challenge. And if you find the printers, they are a bit pricey, and depending on the model, some of them take interesting paper that may or may not be available anymore. But this one is, you can still get the paper for this, but the printer is a little bit difficult to find. Not only that, this particular model had such a small amount of memory, 544 bytes, I believe, after full reset. And there was a 1K memory expansion available for these, so still not too much memory available. So if you actually wrote any programs on here, saving them to cassette tape was probably a necessity, because you couldn't store that many programs at once in the models. So anyhow, connecting a cassette recorder could be equally difficult if you don't have the cassette interface as well. Again, those could be, depending on the model, depending on the the particular model and how rare it may be, you may not be able to find the cassette interface. And this is an example of one for this particular model. So the PCUI is a device that's intended to be a more modern replacement for both the printer and the cassette interface. And so for the cassette interface, we have I've put a micro SD card on the PCUI, so anything stored over the cassette protocol will be stored to the SD card, and then whenever printing, the output can be directed to a serial printer or a parallel printer, depending on depending on the preferences that you might have. In this case, I have one of each, so I'll demo both of those. Again, this is a prototype of the PCUI. By the time this video is posted, it, chances are, has gone through probably a few more hardware revisions. So I'm testing this with various different models and implementing the the bus protocol for each one. So in this case, I've set the PCUI to the PB-100 line of pocket computers, and I've connected the pocket computer port here. This is one port that's intended to connect to many different models. There is a TI GraphLink version of feature support as well, so that's a separate port. But for all other pocket computers, this standard connector is used. And then there's a interface pack which varies depending on the model. So Sharp may use a different pinout, in fact does use a different pinout than the Casio models. So you just plug the other end of the cable into the interface pack designed for that model, and then set the menu to the appropriate line of model on the screen here through the menus. You may notice we have a couple of bodge wires here. I didn't get the hardware design exactly right. In typical fashion, I designed a revision of this interface pack and didn't really think through the software all the way. So I ended up having to switch two pins around to get the hardware and software to interface. So needless to say, there's another revision of this one coming. But let's take a look at how this works. So what I'll do first is I'll demonstrate how to save a program. So I have two programs in here. I have a banner program in program 0, and I think I have a Hello World program in slot 1 there. So to save a program, I'll just type save, followed by a file name. I'll call it banner, and then I'll end the quote there, and then I'll pan over to the PCUI. I'll press enter on the pocket computer, and it sent the banner program. So on the tiny OLED screen here, I display the name of the file that was received. That's kind of important because you can do a save all on these models. Unlike the Sharps, these have segmented program areas. So you could do a save all, for example, and in that case, it would come across here as a save all. And to load a program, I'm going to go into load here and press enter. And then on the PCUI, it automatically brings up the loading or send screen here. So you could send basic programs, variables, and memo, or I labeled it data. So I'm going to go ahead and say basic, and I'm going to load banner. And it's going to indicate that it's sending. On the Pocket computer, it says that it's a program file, and it lists the file name banner, and it indeed loaded the banner program. So we can load variables as well and save variables to and from the micro SD card, as well as memo. I believe the PB-100 had memo, and the PC-5, PC-6, which were later in the line of these Casio models. Okay, so what I'm going to do is demonstrate the printing capability. So on the PCUI, I'm going to enable the printer mode. And then in this case, I'm going to use a serial printer. So I have a printer connected to the serial port. And this is a very inexpensive Epson point-of-sale thermal printer, otherwise known as a receipt printer. You've probably seen these around. They are very, very inexpensive used. The paper is really cheap. No ink is needed. So these are great for printing from calculators if you choose to do that. But any serial printer, any parallel printer should work just fine. So what I'm going to do on this model is it has a printer echo feature. So if I hit, let's see, I'm going to go to the home screen, not home screen, the run screen, and I'm going to press mode 7, which will turn on the printer icon. And what that is indicating is anything that's output to the screen is going to be echoed to the printer. So I could go ahead and do a calculation like 1 + 1, press enter, then I could multiply that by 9, for example. And then if I go over to my printer, we can see that the echo of the screen to the printer worked. So the printer, the printer echo is working. So another demonstration here is my banner program. I usually write these just to become familiar with BASIC and the printer and that kind of thing. So I'll go ahead and hit run. And the echo of the screen actually is still on, so it probably printed, let's see, letter, question mark. Yeah, so that's typical of leaving the print mode on. So I'm going to type in PCUI one letter at a time, and I'll pan over here to the printer. So I entered a P, and then I'll type C. And then U. And then I. Okay, so example of a banner printout. The width of the characters, or the line, I should say, the line width there is limited to the original FP-12S printer. It's the model of printer that's supposed to come with this, or that would attach to this. I think it's limited to 20 some odd characters per row. So when doing calculations, the Pocket computer will output a whole series of spaces, leading spaces or trailing spaces to get the carriage return. And it'll issue that carriage return kind of at a fixed point once it reaches the end of a line, the maximum. So even though this printer could do more width per row, the Pocket computer assumes that there's only one printer that ever came with these that's compatible. There's the one that I showed, and then there's a portable one that takes AA batteries, or that sits off to the side that Sharp made. But in this case with Casio, there was only one model that I know of that that attached here. So it was similar in width to the Sharp model. But anyhow, it was never intended to be connected to a receipt printer that had more columns. But the printout did work, and the PCUI could have a feature to expand or print in graphics mode, the larger text, if I really have time to do that. So we can see the printer works with this particular model. Again, I did mention that I have a serial printer connected. I also have a parallel printer connected. And since this is vintage, I figured we can try one of these, which is a dot matrix, let's see, 24-pin printer. So back in the day, this would be what they'd call letter quality, which is as good as you can get for a dot matrix. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the menu. I'm going to stop the printer. I'm going to switch the output from the serial port to the parallel port. So I'm just going to go into the printer setting, change the port to, well, first I'll change the printer type to generic, not ESC POS, which is the Epson. I'll change the port to parallel from RS-232. And then I'll go back into the printer mode, and I'll do the same thing. What I'll do is I will print a letter. Let's see, I'll print, again, a P, the CUI, and see if it works. So I'll enter a P, pan over to the printer. And I'll type C. U. And then and we can see that the output is very similar to the thermal printer. So this just I use that printer for testing. It's parallel printers are not. I don't think they're sold anymore. I mean, I know this particular line is still sold, believe it or not, but they're not common. They're not as common as they used to be. So the parallel port version works just the same as the serial port version. And again, you can switch between the two. So in terms of models that this particular mode works in, I mentioned the PB-100, and then in the description of the video, I'll put all the actual model numbers. There's a handful that this PB-100 would be compatible with. There were quite a few different models that looked very similar to this that would work just the same. So one of the other models, again, similar, in the similar line, would be the FX770 or series, I think the 895 was the last in that model, or 795. There's a whole bunch of models that are similar in look to the PC-5 and PC-6 from Tandy or Radio Shack. So I'm going to unplug this from the PC-4, and I'll plug this into a PC-6, which looks like this. The port on these is on the side. I'll try to navigate this while holding the camera. All right, so that is plugged in to the side. And interestingly, when you connect this to the Radio Shack printer that they sold, or the cassette interface, which I showed earlier, they would sell a cable that you'd have to use to connect, because this couldn't really easily plug in sideways. So there was an interface cable. It's rarer than these pocket computers are and the printers. I have a bunch of them. I just find that kind of interesting that they had to buy a cable, sell a cable to connect it. So I've switched the mode to 770p, which is this line of pocket computers, and the display's a little dim here, but it is working. I had it at a much different angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the printer back to the RS-232, And the type, I'm going to switch back to the ESC POS, which is the Epson protocol. I'm going to go into printer mode. And then what I'll do is I'll turn on, again, it's mode 7. So if I press mode, then 7, you can see the print icon there. Let's see if I can get the contrast a little bit better. There we go. So now it's going to echo whatever I type onto the printer. So 3.141. And let's see what happens. And it echoes, again, just the same as the PC-4. And I do have a PC-5. Again, those are kind of rare too, compared to these. These are all over the place. So it works just the same. So that is a demonstration of, again, a prototype of the PCUI. This was intended to be offered as a kit and something that is relatively inexpensive to build. So I'll be finalizing the hardware, just a few more models of Pocket Computer to make sure I have everything I need on this board before cutting yet another revision. But I will post a link in the description for the page related to this project, as well as the models that I just demonstrated here. Thank you for watching.